Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It's a real pleasure to welcome Professor Meir Litvak. Just by way of brief introduction, well, first, my name is Jonathan Lincoln. I'm the director of the Center for Jewish Civilization. Of course, we have already had several events and have several more planned, at least this semester and next semester, looking at not just the situation inside Israel and the region, but also at the wider aspects of Jewish civilization. And I see some familiar faces, so glad that we have some of our students here as well. And we invite you to look at our newsletters, check out our website, and details the series of events that we have coming up in the next few weeks. I won't go into too much detail about it, but please do look at our calendar. So today we have Meir Litvak. Meir Litvak is the Aaron and Cecile Goldman Visiting Israeli Professor, which is a real privilege for us to have here. It's something that we share between the Department of Government and the College and the Center for Jewish Civilization and SFS. He holds a PhD from Harvard University and MA from Tel Aviv University. He's a professor in the Department of Middle Eastern History and senior research associate at the Alliance Center for Iranian Studies at Tel Aviv University. His research focuses on linkages between religion, society, politics, and modern Iranian Shiism, and linkage between nationalism and religion in the Muslim Middle East. He's also written extensively on Arab Iranian attitudes towards Jews, the Holocaust in particular. And this year, we're fortunate he's teaching for us on religion, politics, and society in Israel. We are extremely grateful to Professor Litvak for joining us and helping us shed some light on the impact of October 7th, in particular for Israeli society and politics. And of course, that we're now 1 year on from the massacre and the war that has ignited, that has not only resulted in destruction of large parts of Gaza and a huge death toll, and now encompassing Lebanon, Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen to an extent. So in light of that, perhaps we can also take advantage of you to offer some thoughts on escalation between Israel and Iran and what that might portend for the future. So some weighty topics. Meir, thank you so much. You can go to the podium if you feel more comfortable. Okay, thank you.
First of all, thank you for coming, and first, thank you for having me here at Georgetown. My first time, by the way, in Georgetown. And let me say that what I will speak is, I would call it as an anguished, angry, is saying it, I'm really talking out of pain. Okay, of what is happening to in Israel, to our society, to the region, etc. Let me start by saying that Israel today is a traumatized society. We suffered in one day the largest number of casualties since the Holocaust. Also, never since the Holocaust has such a large number of civilians been killed in one day, raped. All areas of Israel were captured. There are still large, there are over 150,000 internal refugees in Israel. There are large areas in Israel that are, in a way, under daily shelling, and the state has shrunk. It's no longer, never been a huge state, by the way, but it's shorter than before because large areas in the north are uninhabitable, or in the south, people have not returned yet to many of their places. So on the one hand, it is a society under trauma, under pain. There's anger, which I will elaborate. It's also a society in crisis, the worst crisis we have had, say, political, economic, and social crisis. At the same time, let me start by something positive. This was also been the finest hour of Israeli civil society in many ways. Before the war, there was we were stuck in the middle of a political crisis. Okay? When the government was trying to pass a series of legal changes, they call it reform. We used to call it legal or governmental coup. Basically, the government was trying to implement laws that would have diminished, undermined democracy in Israel. And for over 8 months, every Saturday, hundreds of thousands of people demonstrated against the government. I used to say jokingly, I had my own place, reserved place in the demonstrations with my wife. So this was before the war. But for instance, during the war, during the first October 7th itself, there were cases of many people who volunteered, risked their lives. Some of them, were, by the way, were killed, were trying to salvage people who were under fire. After the war, thousands of people volunteered to help farmers to pick up their crops because people were drafted. Even among the ultra-Orthodox community, which I will talk about, people volunteered to come and, to salvage bodies, salvage remains of bodies because people were burned. So on the one hand, and other acts of volunteering. So on the one hand, this is the finest hour of civil society. By the way, the government did not function well during the first week of the war. At the same time, it is a deeply divided society, and here I blame the government. I blame especially Netanyahu, our prime minister. Let me say in parentheses, I detest Netanyahu, so whatever I say, you can take it with the. I'm biased, yes, I'm biased. I agree. I think it's very problematic leader to put it mildly. We are deeply divided as a society, but so far, fortunately, I would say these divisions have not affected yet the military is fighting our enemies that were up to destroy us. We never had a situation that during war. By the way, Jews were always divided. Okay, by the way, even in the worst hours, you wouldn't imagine, but even in the example, even in the rebellion of the Warsaw Ghetto against the Nazis, okay, when few Jews remained alive, they still split two organizations. Okay? This is Jews, two Jews with two opinions. But never did we have, and also we had divisions in previous wars, but never in such a way that we have a prime minister who comes out against his defense minister, who comes out against army leaders during the war, while taking credit for the success for himself and blaming others for the problems. Never did we have a situation that the prime minister is trying to depose the defense minister during the war, not because of differences over conducting the war, but because of personal grudge. We have another problem that I think that I've said again bitterly, and that I don't think Netanyahu has any empathy for the hostages. Never before, by the way, we have such a large number of civilians captured as hostages. We had some in 48, not such number. Or, by the way, for the kibbutzim, who have been destroyed, burned. Some of them lost half of their population, killed, captured, or taken hostages. We didn't see any sign of empathy by Netanyahu toward the kibbutzim. And ironically, he doesn't even care about the people in the, because we have towns in the border, but the people who voted for him. Now, he doesn't care for the kibbutzim because they never voted for him. He doesn't give a damn about the people who voted for him because he knows they will vote for him anyway. So why should he do anything for them? But this is on the one level. The other level, which is much more dangerous, or equally dangerous in the long run, is that we don't have a strategy. Long-term strategy. What do we want to achieve after being attacked? After the need, let me say, the need to destroy organizations like Hamas. I will talk about the casualties later. If you want to mention casualties, I think there are some misperceptions about casualties. Maybe I'll say it now. There's been tremendous uproar in the world about Gaza casualties. But there is one, not only misperception, but there is one, I would say, something misleading. The world media, including in the US, presents all the casualties as civilians. This is false. About more than a third of the casualties are fighters, Hamas fighters who were killed during fights. Now, we are in the world facing today a situation that never existed in any previous war in the past, which is, by the way, sometimes faced to some extent. US faced it in Iraq, and it will be an ever-growing phenomenon. That is, you have military organizations, guerrilla organizations, freedom fighters, you can name them whatever you want, who use civilians as as human shields, who intentionally, as a matter of policy, store ammunition and weapons in private houses, in mosques, desecrating mosques, okay, in hospitals, by the way, in pure violation of any international law. Okay. They use these places to hide. They use civilians, and by the way, they take pride of using civilians as human hostages, as human shields, so that there will be casualties. Now, according to international law, if civilian premises are used to hide weapons or soldiers, after giving proper warning, they are legitimate targets. It's a tragedy, it's tragic, but it is unfortunately a necessary outcome of war. There is no way armies fight terrorists like Al-Qaeda, like ISIL. I'll give an example in a second, when they are using civilians as human shields and avoiding civilian casualties. Now, if you take the ratio of civilian casualties versus military casualties in Gaza, and you compare it to other wars, then the ratio in Gaza is much better than other places. Let me give you one example. In 2004, the US Army fought in the Iraqi town of Fallujah after several Americans were taken hostages and were brutally murdered by the terrorists in Fallujah. The ratio of civilian to military casualties in Fallujah was between 3 to 4 to 1. That is 4 civilians per every military casualty. The ratio in Gaza is 2 civilians per 1 military casualty. That is, Gaza is better than Fallujah. Not to and again, it is a tragedy, but it is an unavoidable tragedy when such organizations use civilians, by the way, in order for these civilians to be harmed. Hamas leaders said openly, and I would say with pride, they didn't build the tunnels for the civilians. They said the civilians, the UN should care about the civilians. They didn't build the tunnels for ourselves. Okay? So we have a leadership that intentionally sacrificed civilians to gain popular support, but also to fight against its enemies. And this is the tragedy. Okay? There's a tragedy of the Palestinian people that they have such leaders. There's a tragedy of all Middle Eastern people. I'm saying it not as an hypocrisy. I think this is a real tragedy of the Palestinians, that they've been cursed by leaders like Hamas, and to some extent like Yasser Arafat in the past. But we also have been proud with our leaders, let me say. Not as bad as Hamas, but not a great blessing either, let me say. Now, in addition to the lack of strategy by our own leaders, okay, they don't present what is the long-term view of how they're going to end the conflict in Gaza, how they're going to end the conflict in Lebanon, which was imposed upon us. Hezbollah launched the war against Israel. Hezbollah, we had a ceasefire with Hezbollah since 2006. Hezbollah started the war against us on October 8th in order to help Hamas. And again, Hezbollah, by the way, also used mosques, hospitals, schools, private houses to store rockets. And yes, this led to destruction. Again, tragic outcome of the war. But again, our government lacks strategic vision, what they want to achieve in this war, and how they want to end it. We're also facing an internal economic crisis, and we have a finance minister who has no clue about economics, who doesn't understand the depth of our crisis. He has a unique economic vision that no other finance minister ever understood, which is that if we will fulfill the laws of the Torah, then we'll have prosperity. And it has been a unique theory. Maybe you will get the Nobel Prize for it, for economics. So far, it has not proven itself to be very efficient, but maybe who knows? Maybe it will have to succeed. For instance, not only do we have a budget deficit which increases tremendously, and that will mean very high inflation. For the first time in 15 years, we had our international credit status lowered twice. Never happened on the contrary. Our credit position improved in the past 15 years, twice, but not went down. And instead of understanding the government situation, he prefers to criticize all the economists who don't understand anything, the anti-Semites and idiots, etc. Again, he refuses to carry out the necessary economic measures to salvage our economic situation. And that would mean that the future is not going to be bright. On the country, it would be very bad for most Israelis. We have also government ministers who don't understand, cannot admit that they failed in carrying out their duties, and therefore they are looking for scapegoats, scapegoat of the media, Supreme Court, State General Attorney, the national community for their failures. And I would also say there's a vicious incitement by government supporters against the hostages, against the families of the hostages, against the people who had lost the people who suffered in the kibbutzim. The family members were killed and or captured, as if they are to blame for their tragedy, as if it was because they were supposedly peaceniks, okay? They supported peace, they got their punishment from God. We have another problem of division in society is that uneven sharing of the burden. There used to be a joke in Israel that in Israel society was divided into three parts. One part paid taxes, one part work, one part paid taxes, and one part served in the army. The problem in Israel is the three parts are the same. There's 1/3 of society that works, pays taxes, and serves in the army. One part of society are the Arabs. They don't have to serve in the army, rightly so. They should not be forced to serve in the Israeli army. Many of them are poor. But we have a growing ultra-Orthodox population that doesn't work, doesn't serve in the army, but gets bigger and bigger budgets, and refuse to share the burden with the rest of society. And we have ultra-Orthodox politicians, again, who refuse to make any concession for the general good. Now they want to pass a law that would give exemption to over 50,000 young people who are eligible for draft, that will not be drafted. At a time when the Israeli army suffered casualties and has manpower shortage. Another example, by the way, of these divisions is that yesterday there were commemorations. And again, for the first time, we had dual commemorations. Official commemoration by the government, basically to deflect criticism from the government, and commemoration of the families who lost. Again, even in mourning now, we cannot even imagine. It's a great tragedy. Let me end, and again, I'm sorry, I don't have a good news when I stop. Let me end by saying that, again, our major problem today is, in addition to the internal division may threaten our resilience to stand up to the challenges that we have to face, and that our lack of strategy with our leaders may again bring us to a sort of a dead end, a war without an end. This is again another thing, almost an existential danger. So we are facing a major problem, and unfortunately, I don't see for the time being the light at the end of the tunnel. I'll stop here again. It's not a happy ending, but remember the list, I work on Iran. In Iran, you never have a pain, by the way. The opposite of all. So we are closer to Iran, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Meir. I think maybe while you're up there, or feel free to sit down if it's more comfortable, but maybe I'll just take the prerogative. I have a couple of questions for you, but I thought maybe before sort of delving a little bit more into this, amazing situation that you've amazingly bad, I suppose, situation that you've just described in Israel. Maybe you could just give us some insights right now, just into the current situation with Iran. I mean, the world is sort of on edge right now, waiting for. I think it's sort of a foregone conclusion that Israel will strike. Is that correct? And how do you see what's the scenario that you see playing out?
Okay, let me say two things. First of all, I don't know what will happen. I always say talking to my students, if I know anything about the future, I will not be teaching in the university for legal salary of the Israeli academic. I would work in the stock market, make money. I don't know. It is likely that Israel will strike. Let me also say one thing, and again, it may sound superfluous, but I think it's important. Iran is the only country in the world, by the way, that officially and openly and unequivocally calls for the elimination of Israeli state. No other state today calls for the elimination of Israel, not even Syria or Libya. Iran is the only country that calls for elimination. But Iranians are so smart, instead of fighting us directly, their strategy is using proxies, like is using Arab organizations that would fight for Iran. They always like to quote a Saudi journalist who said that Iran is willing to fight until the last drop of the last Arab. Now, Iran has been waging against us a war of attrition for more than 2 decades, again, using Hezbollah, using Hamas, who is not a full-fledged proxy, semi-proxy, or Islamic Jihad. And when the war started again, it's Hezbollah with Iranian encouragement, the Houthis in Yemen with partial encouragement, and even now militias in Iraq with some Iranian encouragement are attacking us. Now, we have waged a struggle against Iran, I would say, not always in the most smartest ways. I think some of our actions were not very smart. Not that, for instance, I take the killing of Haniya, of Hamas leader in Iran. Now, he was a bitter enemy of Israel. But I don't think his killing had any benefit. He was not a leader of military leader. Okay? His killing did not affect Hamas capabilities. And it certainly humiliated the Iranians. So was it smart? No. We have a saying, in the road, be smart, don't be just. There's a driver. So we may have done some things that unnecessarily brought us to direct collision with Iran. Okay, again, they are fighting us, but we should have been, I would say, smarter. Okay? We have been attacked twice by missiles from Iran. And here's the dilemma. In the Middle East, if you don't retaliate and you are perceived as weak, you invite more attacks. If you retaliate, the other side must also retaliate because it's a question, and the other side must show that it is not. And then there's the danger of escalation. How to retaliate and not lead to escalation, I don't think there's a magic formula here. At least I don't have it. Maybe limited attack to show the US that we are capable and we should somehow stop it. Maybe attack that would then, each side would claim victory, and then we'll start this escalation. I don't think that the full-scale war with Iran, I don't think the Iranians want full-scale war with us, nor do we want and need another war with them. The war with Iran will be not good for any party in the Middle East. The question is, how do you find the leaders who will know how to de-escalate? I'm afraid that neither us nor the Iranian leadership so far has this acumen of how to lead to de-escalation with Iran.
Very worrying indeed. So maybe I'll just bring it back quickly to the internal issue, but then we'll open it up to the audience in a minute, and feel free to mix and match your questions about the situation in Iran or inside Israel. But it is a very stark image that you presented of these, sort of dueling commemoration ceremonies in Israel. When you think about, October 7th, the largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, the largest terrorist attack in Israeli history. I mean, the imagery, it doesn't need any advertising. It's a deeply profound trauma that every Israeli across the Jewish world and beyond feels. But yet, 1 year on, there's a sense of betrayal in some ways. And I think those of you who joined us for the event with the families of the hostages heard a little bit of that firsthand, and I think it's interesting how prevalent that is. But with that in mind, and with your feelings, your open feelings, which I think a lot of people share about Netanyahu. Of course, it's different for you. You're an Israeli, so we're watching it a little bit from a distance. But short of a miracle, what does it take? What is it going to take to see a change in government in Israel?
Unfortunately, it will have to be, no, things will have to be much worse before they become better. That is, maybe the economy will eventually remove Netanyahu, because we are heading toward an economic crisis. Because of war costs a lot of money, any war, and mismanagement of the economy makes it much worse. The Israeli public has not yet felt the full economic price of it, but it will have to feel it. It's unavoidable. Maybe that will bring people to change their mind. People don't remember, but in Netanyahu, by the way, was a finance minister for 2003 and 2006. Israel was in an economic crisis. He proved to be a very good finance minister, really one of the best at the time. But he paid a very heavy price in the elections. The Likud lost 2/3 of its seats in 2006 elections. Netanyahu learned a lesson, by the way. Be a demagogue, not be a good economist. But because we are heading toward the crisis, maybe that will bring a change. I don't know.
And then maybe just related, and then I'll go to the audience, I promise. But you mentioned Smotrich and some of the internal divisions. I think that maybe just for people to understand, the divisions aren't just sort of, from what I'm hearing from you, right, left, as we understood it on October 6, 2023, doesn't necessarily make sense in some ways. But when we look at Smotrich and this, and you talked about the, 1/3, division, which isn't probably exact, but something like that. What about the religious or extreme right? Are they the same thing? In some ways, and how do you see that overlapping with what you mentioned before about the sort of judicial reform process or judicial coup that
I would say the Israeli right is divided into two groups. One is, I would call it secular right, people who are mostly security minded and are afraid / suspicious / distrustful of the Arabs and not wish to take any chance, any risk in order to get to some kind of settlement with the Arabs. There is also a religious, semi-messianic right. The people who believe, genuinely by the way, that their interpretation of Zionism is part of a divine process of divine redemption that will eventually bring the Jewish people to, again, the process of the redemption, the Messiah will come, and then everything will be at the ending. These are the people who are settlers, most settlers in the West Bank. These are people like Smotrich, partner / rival Ben Gvir, and they pursue again policy, messianic policy, which dismisses what people like me see reality because we don't understand the divine process. They are different from people like, let's say, Defense Minister Gallant, who is right-winger but does not have any messianic illusions. And Netanyahu is not messianic. I would say Netanyahu is a very smart person, but Netanyahu today doesn't give a damn. He cares about his own personal safety. He's facing the trial. He wants to avoid to stop the trial, and we become, I think, totally cynical. And so he is not messianic. He's simply, in my view, again, cynical.
is there a situation that you see him facing a sort of similar reckoning, something similar to what happened to Golda Meir after 1973? Is there some sort of a configuration of political forces that might lead to this?
First of all, when Golda Meir, when she resigned.
Well, yeah, and of the Agronat.
Well, Golda Meir resigned because she, unlike Netanyahu, by the way, I think she was a person of conscience. I think, by the way, it was historians have been unfair to her. I think presently historians reveal that she was smarter and better than people thought in the past. But by the way, the way she handled the war was superb compared to Netanyahu, really. But she had conscience. And I remember vividly, she initially did not understand, she had to go, but there was a debate on TV. And then one of the leading intellectuals in Israel spoke. This was an intellectual, but he was a religious person, moderate religious person, I mean, not right wing, philosopher, whose son was killed several years earlier in the army, and he was critical of her. And she said, if I lost him, if he's against me, then I have to go. If people like him are against me, I have to go. And she went, and she resigned. That is, the difference was that she really had conscience. She was a conscientious person. She was not a cynical politician.
Okay. And Netanyahu will face
In
this?
my view, it's cynical.
Yes,
He will have to. Maybe he will face no choice.
Please, yeah, yeah.
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for speaking about Hamas and Hezbollah at the beginning of your talk and how they operate and how they use Palestinians as human shields, because they're often being conflated with, as freedom fighters for the Palestinian people. And that was very important. And since you're being recorded, and I'd like to show this to all my classes, it would be wonderful if you could also, for the benefit of our students, more than anything else, explain what then the final vision of Hamas and Hezbollah are. Why are they fighting if not for actually the Palestinian people? What is their final vision of what they see should happen to the Jews in Israel, to the state of Israel, and what should replace them and how and who would be in charge at that point? Just from an expert, so that we understand what the goal is here.
Hamas is a nationalist Islamic organization. Hamas fights, according to their statements, to bring about an Islamic state in the land of Palestine, okay? Which Israel will eliminate the state. But even worse, going to Hamas ideology, and not only ideology, repeated statements by Hamas leaders, repeated statements by Hamas preachers on Friday sermons that have been broadcasted on Palestinian TV every Friday until October 6th. Okay? The Jews have forfeited their right to exist as a people, as individuals, because they have challenged Islam. According to the Hamas perception of the right order, Muslims should be on top. Jews were punished by God to be dispersed among the nations and to be humiliated by the normal conditions. The fact that the Jews established a state on what they regard as a Muslim land displays the Palestinians. The Jews have rebelled against Islam and they have rebelled against God, and therefore they lost their right to exist. This has been said explicitly, unequivocally, in many Hamas documents, again on sermons, and they quote very often, by the way, an Islamic hadith, which is interestingly enough, historically has never been in central place. Hadith is a tradition attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. This hadith has never received central place in early Islam. Then they're translated to something central. This is called, I'll say it in Arabic, Wa'ad al-Shajar wal-Hajar, or the promise of the tree and the stone. And it says that the end of time will not come until the day when Muslims will fight the Jews and kill them. And on that day, the Jews will flee, and they will hide behind trees and rocks. But then God will open the mouth of every tree and every rock, and they will say, "O Muslim, O slave of God, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him." Except for one tree, which is called Gharkad. We don't know exactly what it means, like the salt bush. And the saying ends, "Look behind the Gharkad." Now, this statement, this promise has been heard again and again by Hamas preachers, and some of them say, by the way, and an interesting touch to it, they say, why do you think that Israel spends so much effort to plant trees? Okay. No, the Israeli Jewish Fund puts great emphasis on planting trees because they know that this tradition is true. They prepare the trees so they will have a place to hide when we come and kill them. Okay? So Hamas openly speaks about, again, eliminating Israel, but also eliminating the Jews. Recently, by the way, Yahya Sinwar made a small amendment. He said, well, we will destroy Israel. We will allow a small number of, say, essential Jews, doctors and others, to remain alive, to work under us, to compensate the Palestinians for what Israel has done. Okay? Now, Hezbollah says something very similar. To give you an understanding, Hassan Nasrallah, the founder of Hezbollah, explained that God allowed Israel to start to form so that many Jews will be gathered in one place. It will be easier to destroy, exterminate. Okay? So this is something that, again, Hezbollah said, uses, and Hezbollah, by the way, even though it's a Sunni hadith, what I mentioned, and Hezbollah is Shi'i, they adopted this hadith and also you. So yes, both Hezbollah officially and Hamas speak openly, not only about destroying Israel as a state, but also destroying the Jews. Some of them, by the way, say not only the Jews in Israel, but also Jews worldwide.
And what would be erected is an Islamic fundamentalist.
Yes,
state,
this will be
With, with Hamas and Hezbollah leaders at its
well,
head.
Hezbollah has different vision. Hezbollah believes eventually also Muslims will become Shia. Hamas believes it will be a Sunni Islamic state.
Thank you.
Hi, Professor. My name is Marina. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I have two questions about Iran, and you can pick your favorite word. The first one is, after seeing Hezbollah forces and Hamas forces destroyed or at least incapacitated to the degree that we've seen, I think what I've noticed is that Iran is starting to like embolden its other proxies. So you see Iraqi militias have fired toward Israel recently and the Houthis. So my first question is, how do you see that strategic shift? Will they create new proxies in other places? Will they just like double down on the ones they have? Like, what will be their strategy there? And then my second one is just in terms of the theocratic regime in Iran. I've heard from last year's visiting Professor Abraham Sella that he thinks that regime is so ironclad that there's nothing that can be done to remove them from power. Like, they've so insulated themselves. Do you think that's a correct assessment? Do you think there's anything that Israel can do or the United States can do to unsettle them?
Let me start with the proxies. First of all, Iran cannot create more proxies. They would have liked to. They tried, by the way, but fortunately, I would say they failed. That is, the most Sunnis do not follow the leadership of the Iranian regime. Okay? Hamas is the exception, but Hamas doesn't follow Iran. Hamas always said that they are willing to become allies of him. If Iran wants to help us fight Israel, thank you very much, welcome. But we're not going to be your proxies. For instance, when you have a conflict with the Emirates over the 3 islands in the Persian Gulf, we're not going to help. But otherwise, Iran failed to establish Sunni proxies. So, and now, since there are only 3 Shia states in the Middle East, but with Shia majorities, Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, these are the proxies. My guess is that they will try to beat Hezbollah. Hezbollah has not been destroyed yet. It suffered a major blow. Yes, it is weakened. Yes, it has not been destroyed. By the way, they launched 400 rockets yesterday. Okay? Still capable of inflicting harm. And Iran will probably try to beat Hezbollah because Hezbollah was their darling. Hezbollah has been Iran's long arm in the Middle East. They're the most loyal and effective proxy organization. The Iraqis are unruly, problematic sometimes. They were split among themselves. Hezbollah has been very loyal, very unified. Hezbollah sent advisors to fighters to Syria, advisors to Iraq, and advisors to Yemen. They will try to do it and also reinforce the others. So this is as far as possible. Now, regarding the UN regime, let's put it this way. In the short run, this regime seems to be very, very powerful. And I think that I would say that there are 5 different reasons why I think, unfortunately, this regime is powerful. First of all, it is a repressive regime with a very successful repressive system. I think there's tremendous, genuine fear in Iran from rebellion. Let me give an example. In the very brave, admirable protest movement 2 years ago of young people, especially young women, protested the scarf. The regime snipers shot intentionally at women, blinding women intentionally, and also shooting women at their chests to deform them physically. Okay? Not only the 600 people got killed, but several hundred thousand young women were blinded. Okay? That scares others. Who am I to underestimate the courage of these brave women? Okay? Another thing is that many Iranians look at what happened in the Arab world, in the so-called Arab Spring, okay? Civil wars in Syria, Yemen, Libya, and all the turmoil in Egypt. And they say, thank you very much, who needs it? Okay? Fourth, what guarantee do you have that we'll topple this regime, we'll get something better, we'll make it something much worse, like military dictatorship of the Revolutionary Guards? Fifth, is that this regime is not popular, but it enjoys the support of a harsh nucleus of 20–30% population, which believes in this regime, depends on it economically or benefits from it economically, and is willing to fight. And again, I always like to quote an anonymous son of an anonymous Ayatollah, who says that in Iran, 200,000 people who are willing to fight and kill for you are much more than 2 million likes in Facebook. At the same time, having said that, I think the time works against the Iran regime in the long run. I think the majority of population in Iran is alienated from this regime. Let me tell you a nice story about population in Iran. There's a very, I think, telling, and in the entrance of every major public building in Iran, they've painted on the ground the American flag and the Israeli flag. So the people who enter, let's say, any university or major government institution, they have to step on the American and Israeli flags. There's footage of the entry of Tehran University. The huge American Israeli flags are on the ground. What you see are students working on the margins, not to step on these flags, because they defy the regime. Okay? Now, so I think that there is growing alienation of population from this regime. That's one thing. Secondly, the economy is in bad shape. The economy of Iran is mismanaged. Okay? By the way, Iran is number 149 in the 190 state scale of corruption. Denmark is number 1, so Iran is not on top, and Denmark is not. Okay? And also 2 other things. Nature is working against the regime in Iran. Now, I don't know about your views about global warming, but I always say we in the Middle East, we know that global warming is a fact. Okay? And Iran is facing 3, in my view, existential challenges because of nature. One is severe water shortage. Second is rising temperatures. All forecasts of UN experts, I'm talking about government experts, not some guy in opposition who will say delusional. They are afraid that temperatures in the southern part of Iran will rise in the summer to something. It's let's say 55 to 60 degrees centigrade, which means over 120 Fahrenheit. Okay? Human beings cannot survive such heat, and their fear is that the millions of people will migrate from the south northward. That will destroy society. Let me give another example. There used to be a great lake in northern Iran called Lake Urmia, whose area was 5,500 square kilometers. I don't know how to calculate in miles. It used to be. Now it is less than 500 square kilometers. Drove, it can't drive. The worst problem is that there are 13 million tons of salt being accumulated. And the great fear is that winds will carry out this salt and spread it all over. That will destroy areas hundreds of kilometers. So temperature, water, there's a growing water deficit in Iran. These things will threaten the economy and society, not only the regime, but they may threaten Iran's existence as a state. This is not something about 200 years from now. These are threats that will be 20, 30 years from now. And again, already feel some of the problems. That will certainly weaken the regime. Let me end with one sentence. And again, something which I like again to cite a statement which I wasn't smart enough to say it in the Every revolution in modern history came out as a surprise. In retrospect, it seemed inevitable. Why? Because in retrospect, we can trace the long-term processes, but what we can never guess in advance is a psychological factor that is unknown to the people themselves. Which means that right now, the regime in Iran seems to be very powerful and very strong. But maybe, hopefully, I'm wrong. And there will be a revolution next year. And I always say when I speak to public in Israel, I'll be very happy to come and give you a talk and explain why there was a revolution and why we missed it. So maybe the people next year will give you the analysis.
That's big for a successful academic career. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your thoughts. Another dragon, the nuclear. Iran, of course, is moving toward a weapon. Israel, although it says this, never says anything about it, does have weapons, obviously, pretty much. Would those ever be used And what about the Iranian equation of coming close to having a weapon themselves? And I realize this is very apocalyptic and dark. I'll throw it to you.
Iran is certainly making great efforts to become what we call, or Iran is already what we call a nuclear threshold state. That is, Iran has the equipment, the material, the fission material, the equipment, and the know-how to build a nuclear bomb. Iran is within 3 weeks to have enough material for 2 nuclear devices. Producing a bomb takes longer because you need to develop the detonators, and I'm not an engineer, so I can't explain the technicalities. Yet, at the same time, I believe that Iran, for the time being, as long as Khamenei is the leader, has decided not to build nuclear bomb. Not because they are humanists, but because I think for 2 major reasons. One is they're afraid that if they will have a bomb, it will start a nuclear race in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia said openly that should Iran get a bomb, they will get a bomb. Not produce themselves, they cannot, but they will get from the Pakistanis. Turkey does not speak, but makes a preparation for building a bomb. Egypt, not officially, but there have been Egyptian spokesmen who said, Egypt would not tolerate nuclear Iran, meaning also that Egypt may also try to become nuclear. I don't think Iran wants to have a nuclearized Middle East with 5 Israel, included nuclear states. They don't often speak well to each other, highly distrustful of each other, maybe too nervous. That's a very bad recipe. So I think this is one thing. And secondly, neither China nor Russia, that is Iran's patrons, want Iran to become nuclear. Russia is weak today, but China is important. I don't think the Iranians want to alienate the Chinese. And therefore, I think that for the time being, Iran does not go nuclear. That may change when Khamenei will die. He's 86, he's 85 years old. By the way, Iranian clerics have very long life. I would say being cleric gives you apparently good health. So also some rabbis in Israel have very long life. But one day eventually he will die, 30 years from now. I don't know what will be his successor this time. Now, you don't build nuclear weapons to use them. Second World War is the exception. Use it as a deterrence. I don't think Israel will use nuclear weapons unless the very existence of Israel is state. And Iran, by the way, if Iran will acquire nuclear weapons, despite all the rhetoric, I don't think they're going to use it against Israel. They will have nuclear weapons because they're afraid of the US. It will serve as deterrence from the EU against the US, not against Israel. Again, as long as this leadership is in compass. There's one good thing about it to say about Khamenei. Khamenei is not a nice person. He's an anti-Semite. He hates Israel with his guts. He's not crazy. He is rational to the level as really high, deeply the religious people can be, and he's cautious. So I think that as long as he is in office, the likelihood that they will become fully nuclearized is not very great. Again, once he is gone, everything is possible.
Hi, Professor Litvak. My name is Anna. I am from the Conflict Resolution Master's Program. You mentioned that there is no official plan or clear plan for what will happen in Gaza after the war ends. And the government hasn't had an answer for Israeli society nor for the troops. What do you think should happen? I know that there are also differences between the US and Israel if the Palestinian Authority should rule, if settlements should be rebuilt. What do you think should happen?
I very much support the American plan. Personally, I think that the Americans are correct in the sense that long-term solution to Gaza would be to rebuild Gaza. It has to be done by Arabs. Because only an Arab government, I think, now the Palestinian Authority has 2 problems. It is very unpopular, it is very corrupt, for 3 problems, it is very inefficient. But it is the only player that can have some legitimacy and some authority. It needs support, it needs help of the Egyptians, of the Saudis, of the Emiratis, to help it rebuild its influence and force in Gaza. okay? To rebuild Gaza and by the way to suppress Hamas. The Palestinian Authority is afraid of Hamas. People don't know, when Hamas took over Gaza in 2006, not only did they kill several dozens of people, right? One thing what they did from Hamas to Fatah people, they threw them out of top buildings, downwards, okay, to become ground. Not because the elevators were not working. Okay? 200 Fatah fighters fled to Israel to find refuge from Hamas. So Fatah is scared. Most Fatah people are scared from Hamas. And the only possibility, a viable possibility, yes, is to rebuild Gaza under Palestinian Authority with Arab support. It will take a while, it takes time, it needs a lot of effort, success is not certain, but this is now, let me say something. Let me be, I'm visiting the US, let me be critical a little bit about Americans, okay? I mean, Americans, you've been lucky, okay? You have wonderful history, wonderful country. And one thing problematic about Americans is they think they have the solution to every problem. Wrong. Some problems have no solutions. In politics and strategy, the perfect solution is not always attainable. I believe in improvements. That is, you can try to improve things and seek solutions that are not perfect, okay, but are better than the current situation. And I think this is it will be a mistake to believe that we can find a panacea to Gaza's problems or the Middle Eastern problems. No, not going to happen anytime soon. But doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. You have to try to improve the current situation. Again, I think the American plan is fine. And again, let me also say, I think that in the long run, again, as a selfish Israeli, two-state solution with all its problems and difficulties is the only viable solution. Okay? Again, it's not perfect. It's not going to be necessarily in peace. It is the only viable and it's certainly better than all the other alternatives. Again, politics is the choice, is the part of the what is going to be realized, not what is desired.
Follow up?
Not a follow-up, but.
Maybe give me a sec, because I thought maybe while we're on that, in terms of the end game, I mean, it's interesting, you talked about the real danger and the potential for a forever war, and that includes obviously Gaza's part of that, maybe the central part of it, but also, especially with the lack of a plan, going forward. But what do you see on the other fronts, in other words, and in particular Lebanon, I think, because that also, there's seemingly an American plan there too. I mean, I don't think the Israelis would disagree. Ultimately, whatever they think of the United Nations, it's in Resolution 1701, it's in the implementation, some sort of peacekeeping force on the ground. I mean, how do you see it?
I think, yes, in the long run, Resolution 1701, which means the said that Hezbollah should drop on the border. And by the way, there's another Resolution 50 or something, which I don't know, Hezbollah should disarm.
Yes.
Hezbollah is the only militia in Lebanon that is allowed to carry weapons. All the other militias in Lebanon will disarm. Hezbollah is the only one that carries weapons. For the benefit of Lebanon, Hezbollah should be disarmed. By the way, Hezbollah is responsible for the structure of Lebanese economy. People don't know. Lebanon is a bankrupt country. Lebanon has electricity 4 hours a day. The garbage is not collected in Lebanese city, okay, and it's a state on the verge of collapse, largely because of Hezbollah, by the way, because the sanctions against Lebanon, but also so Hezbollah is destroying Lebanon. Yes, the solution, but the problem is again implementation. We don't do it, and by the way, no UN force. All due respect to the UN is completely impossible. There's no way the UN can do anything. It has to be some other force, I don't know which, but not the UN. There's a UN force in Lebanon which does nothing. They do nothing. They're completely worthless.
It's 1501, which is supposed to disarm, and has to do with also Syria's role in the country. But then what else do you what do you see as the alternative? I mean, I think that just as that's not about defending the United Nations that I worked for many years, but we heard the same things in 2006, for example. We heard the same thing, more or less. Israel's been saying the same thing since 67, since Utan took the troops out. I mean, but then you're sort of left with a few alternatives in a way, and especially considering state of foreign relations right now with Israel, with a strained relationship with the United States, which is its best relationship that it has on the global stage. So I don't know. How would it, even if there's no international force there, could there be a bilateral relationship with Lebanon that could take it forward? Or
No, unfortunately not. Let me say, okay. The fact that there was Israeli criticism against the UN for 20 years doesn't mean that it's wrong, because the UN failed.
Sure.
The UN force, UNIFIL, has been stationed in Lebanon since 1978, since the Litani operation. It has failed. It has never fulfilled its duty. It's totally useless and worthless. So you must look for another solution. Now, trying the same failed solution is not the recipe. There should be another force. I don't know exactly which. Now, again, I'm not saying that. Interestingly enough, by the way, today I saw in the news, Israeli news, that Naim Qassem was apparently now the Hezbollah leader, said that they are willing to support the immediate ceasefire. And we'll discuss the details later, meaning that until now, Hezbollah conditioned ceasefire in Gaza. Now they want ceasefire now because they're in a bad state. The answer should be ceasefire, yes, but not. We'll discuss the details later so that you can renew the war 2 weeks from now. Let's discuss details and reach ceasefire with Lebanon, and then some sort of a deal again, or again, maybe a new Lebanese government. Lebanon doesn't have a president for the past 2 years, by the way. Okay. They have an interim government which doesn't function for the past 2 years because Hezbollah does not allow a president to be elected, does not allow a government to be elected, to be formed. Okay, so they have an interim government which is completely impotent. They have no president and no economy. It has to be done again, foreign intervention that will help extricate Lebanon from the constitutional crisis, bring about new government, okay, that will rein in on Hezbollah, will help to rebuild the Lebanese economy, will help to, again, bring some sort of force in Lebanon, in the border, to prevent clashes with Israel. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the UN. UN has failed. We have to find something else.
My question is regarding, I was thinking because in conflict resolution, we study a lot how to prevent violence. And when I'm thinking about what is going on in Gaza, I am thinking about how to prevent and not something like October 7th from happening again. And it has been said that even if you eliminate Hamas, another group may resurface, even if it's different than Hamas. And it will not keep Israel secure and Israelis in security and safe. So how do we prevent another October 7th from happening if what is going on in Gaza may exacerbate the need for violence and revenge from the Palestinians? And
first of all, again, I'm not that optimistic to think that all the problems should be solved. Okay. No, this is the Middle East, not Hollywood. I'm serious. Okay. There's no problems, don't disappear. Okay.
I'm from Colombia, so I know that problems.
The solution in Gaza has to be comprehensive in the sense that it will have to bring in a new type of government, lots of investments, and a change of approach. Now, let me give you 2 examples. Okay, now Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2006. The Norwegians paid Israel money to keep hot houses that Israel built to be transferred to the Palestinians. Greenhouses, sorry, my English. You know what they did? They destroyed them completely, the greenhouses. Why? We don't want anything left from the Israelis. So instead of using this to build agriculture in Gaza, instead of building Gaza as some Palestinian leaders in the past said, it should be the new Hong Kong of the Middle East.
I remember that.
Yeah, but they didn't. Hamas received, with our stupid support. Tens of millions, or hundreds of millions of dollars from Qatar. Not to rebuild the Gazan economy, but to build tunnels. Okay? They received money. We need a Palestinian leadership that will try to rebuild Palestinian society. By the way, Palestinians had such leader. There was such a Palestinian leader called Salam Fayyad. Salam Fayyad was a Palestinian leader. He was, for many years, an official in the World Bank. And then for some time, he served as the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority. He was the smartest modern Palestinian leader because he said, and by the way, he was no pro-Zionist or whatever. He said, what we should do as Palestinians is build the infrastructure for a Palestinian state and then confront the Israelis with a fait accompli. He understood the need to build state institutions, economy, etc. The tragedy was, and I'm saying the tragedy, is that he was semi-unpopular among Fatah leaders. He and Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, were rivals. He did not get enough support from Israel. Okay? And the tragedy was that in the 2006 elections, he got 3% of the vote. Should the Palestinians have more leaders like him, they would be much better off. Everyone would be better. Again, they need leaders who would think of building instead of, dreams. And then, again, things will be better. It's not going to be better, okay? But it will certainly be better than current situation. And then, yes, there may always be some people who will never give up their dream of eliminating this. The question is, will they enjoy the support of 10% population, 30%, or 60%? This is the issue.
Well, if there are no, please go ahead.
Quick question. Actually, too. So I have relatives in Israel, as most Americans do. And we were talking to a cousin not long ago on Zoom and expressing our animosity against Netanyahu. And her comment was, yeah, but there's nobody else. So I want your thoughts on that. Could she be right? Like that?
Let's put this way. Netanyahu has certain charisma. Netanyahu is a master politician. He has, by the way, the right voice. Helps if you have baritone instead of soprano when you're a leader. But it is true that let's say the alternatives are not shining, or none of them is any brilliance. Gantz, for instance, is very unimpressive. Dial-up is unimpressive. Bennett was good administrator, but now. But you can say two things. First of all, people sometimes grow up with the job. And let me give an example from American history. Was Truman a brilliant star in American politics before he became president? No. But he proved to be, I think, one of the best presidents of the US in the 20th century. Okay? So sometimes people who seem to be very unpromising politicians can prove themselves as once they become as a government. They can fail. By the way, in Israel, we had such a thing, there was a prime minister in Israel called Eshkol, very uncharismatic. He did not instill confidence on the eve of the 67 war. But in retrospect, all historians agree that he was an excellent prime minister. And now we know. So, yes, right now, no other politician seems equal to Netanyahu. But Netanyahu has faith. He has led us to disasters. Domestically, by the way, Netanyahu has been able to alienate our only ally in the world, the US. That is, he poses today, in my view, a threat to Israel's existence. So the fact that other politicians are not right, yes, I agree. But then I think they will be still better than.
Okay, yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk about like the long-term implications of this, I'm just wondering, do you think that by attempting to completely eliminate Hamas, Israel is radicalizing a new generation of Arabs and like whether that is actually a good strategic approach.
There's always this danger that yes, if you fight something like Hamas, yes, a new generation will come. But then what is the alternative? To allow Hamas to operate? We tried in the past. It's failed. So we withdrew from Gaza in 2006, and until October 7th, there were several clashes with Gaza, with Hamas, and we've not come in, and we thought we inflicted some punishment. The result was that Hamas grew. A young generation of Hamas activists, supporters grew. A young generation that received Hamas education in schools grew up in Gaza. Okay. So the alternative was not much better either. Now, what should be done, in my view, is two things. One is just to destroy Hamas as much as possible, not be eradicated completely. That's not going to happen, but it can suffer a major blow. Yes. You have to offer the Palestinian generation some future or hope. Here I'm saying as an Israel, alongside Israel. Okay? You have to abandon the dream of eliminating Israel. As painful as it may be for Palestinians, it's not going to happen. Okay, they should be told the truth, and then generate your energy to building a prosperous Palestinian society. Because the alternative is continued misery. Okay? Yes, the young generation will have to eventually face. Let me give you another example of it. Similar. The US inflicted a very heavy punishment on Japan. Okay. But the younger generation grew up in Japan. It is not determined with taking revenge against the US. They realize that Japan has taken their own course. Hopefully, there will be a Palestinian generation that, again, with all the pain and anger against Israel, will accept the reality that this is not something that is leading the Palestinians to any good future. Please.
My question is, why do you think the world kind of holds Israel to like a really intense double standard in terms of its actions? Because if you think about the massacre of October 7th, the fact that hundreds of missiles get sent towards it every single day, you think any other rational country would act the same way as Israel to survive, but it still gets intense criticism from the world. So why do you think that is?
I can give you two answers, one the easy one and one more difficult. The easy one is you can say later anti-Semitic. We held differently because yes, we are Jewish. People hold us different. People expect us, and sense I've been very impolite. Okay. We are expected to be the true Christians, that is, you're slapping one cheek with the other. Okay, not something which no Christian state ever done, but we are expected. This is the easy solution. The more difficult solution would be, or answer, sorry, is that we are used. By the way, I'm not saying that you are perfect, okay, but I don't think we deserve the kind of. Let me also say something. There was an article in the New York Times 2 months ago. You know how many people got killed in the Sudan last year? Last year alone? 150,000 people got killed in the Sudan in the civil war, which is basically a massacre. Did you see anything, notice any promotion about it by Muslim students in America? 150,000 people, Muslims. There is something that is, again, distorted in world media or in also in Western academia. Okay? And I'll be very blunt. Okay? When Muslims kill Muslims, it doesn't make any noise. It's like, I'm saying, I apologize in advance. A dog bites a dog, it's no news. Dog bites a human being, it's no news. Human beings bites a dog. That is, when Muslims kill Muslims, no one gives a damn. When Muslims kill others, again, or by the way, people from, say, oppressed countries, that's fine. People who are presented as, let's say, white, okay, or as Western, as they kill, then it makes much more noise. Okay? One thing. Secondly, is that in certain segments in the world has become this very simple formula. Again, if you belong to oppressed people, then can do no wrong, and you are innocent all the time, which, by the way, might be latent racism. It's treating some people as, semi-kids, they don't know what they're doing. But if you belong to the more advanced part of the world, then you are guilty. And now we are guilty to atone the sins of many white nations. Belgium has a very ugly colonial past. Belgium did not undergo the process of, you can say, moral reassessment of what we did. But Belgium solved this problem by presenting us as the modern evildoers of the world, okay, to atone their past. The same thing in other parts. European left uses Israel as a scapegoat for all the sins of white peoples in the past 500 years. So this is, I think, there's a certain, in my view, distortion that took place among certain circles again in Western countries. And I know that I'm impolite and politically incorrect. I apologize.
That's okay. We bring you this platform. Taking your advice to heart, we won't be so American about it. We won't even seek to try and end on an optimistic note or try and provide a solution. But I think what we will do is thank you very much for sharing your time and sharing your. Thank you very much. Please help yourselves to whatever refreshments are left. Thank you.
Thank you.